trade, challenges and opportunities. So that is the infrastructure in inter-African trade is the main theme. Professor Ebo Texan, Senior Professor of Development Economics at the Department of Economics, University of Ghana, where he is also the Program Coordinator of the Economic Policy Management Program, EPMP. Professor Texan is a development economist with specialization in macroeconomics and finance, monetary and financial economics, international trade policy and finance, small and medium enterprises development, industrial policy, and applied microeconometrics. Ebo has an economic research, teaching, and consultancy career spanning over 20 years. As an academic, he published extensively in international peer-reviewed journals, book chapters, peer-reviewed research papers, conference proceedings, and several consultancy research reports, particularly in the areas of development economics, such as trade policy, monetary and financial economics, industrial policy, international finance, macroeconomic policy management, and SME development, among other areas. He has mentored and supervised over 90 postgraduate students at PhD and master's levels, and continues to serve as member of the executive committees and boards of several entities, including the Academic Board of University of Ghana, Finance, General Purposes Committee, and many others at the University of Ghana. Professor Texan holds a PhD in economics from the University of Nottingham, UK, both an MPhil in economics and BA economics and sociology from the University of Ghana. He was awarded a scholarship by the USAID in 2005 to undertake a one-year PhD coursework at the prestigious Department of Economics at Harvard University, USA, as a special student of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences at Harvard, a program he completed in 2006 before proceeding to the University of Nottingham for his PhD. While in Nottingham, he was affiliated to the Leverhulme Center for Research on Globalization and Economic Policy, and to Credit Center for Development and International Trade, both of the School of Economics and the Nottingham University, UK. Professor Texan has been a member of the African Economic Research Consortium for over 2 decades. Professor Texan is a member of the editorial board of the Ghana Development Agenda, Chartered Institute of the Development of Finance, CIDEF, and has been a reviewer for several journals, including World Economy, West African Journal of Monetary and Economic Integration, WAMI, Journal of African Trade, Journal of the Study of African Economies, Oxford University Press, UK, Development of Journal of African Business, Small Business Economics Journals, and Feminist Economics, etc. Outside his academic commitments, Professor Texan has provided consultancy, advisory, and training services to various private and public sector organizations, including the Ghana Parliamentary Training Institute, the Parliament House of Ghana, TechnoServe Ghana, Ghana Armed Forces Training Staff College, and the Graduate Institute of the International and Development Studies, Geneva, etc. He has consulted for international organizations such as the World Bank, International Development Research Center, IDRC, European Commission, Swiss National Foundation, DANIDA, ILO, UNECA, African Development Bank, UNDP, UN-WIDA, Copenhagen Consensus, among others. Professor Texan is a member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana, a founding executive director of GENADE Consult and Supplies Limited, executive director of Palladium Ghana Limited, a senior consultant of the Corporate Support Group Limited, and a member of the advisory board of the African Center for International Trade and Development, among several others. Definitely, Professor Texan is going to give us a great talk on harnessing infrastructure to boost intra-African trade, challenges and opportunities. Professor Texan, I give you your audience.
past presidents, vice presidents of the Academy, fellows of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Ernest Addison, Governor of the Central Bank of Ghana, Dr. Maxwell Opoku-Afari, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Ghana, the CEO of the Universal Merchant Bank, senior management of Bank of Ghana and the Universal Merchant Bank, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be invited by the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences to speak on the topic, harnessing infrastructure to boost intra-African trade, challenges and opportunities. I must indicate that this topic is timely and aligns very much with the necessary efforts that need to be made to ensure that the continent's free trade area becomes successful. Throughout my study as a trade economist, I have known the importance of free trade areas. I have known that a free trade area has the potential to unlock the economic growth of member countries, enhance efficiency and competition towards industrialization, ensure technology transfer, and more generally, ensure access to a variety of goods. Indeed, the importance of free trade areas within the global multilateral trading system need not be overemphasized. As of March 1st, 2022, the GAAS and the WTO had been notified of almost 800 regional trade agreements, out of which 354 are currently active. Free trade agreements make up over 56% of these RTAs. FTAs have gained popularity due to its relative success in Europe and North America. In the case of Africa, which has enormous natural resources and is home to 1.3 billion people, 16% of the world population, the existence of a continental free area holds huge economic promise for most African countries. It has the potential to increase the continent's intra-regional trade from the relatively low of 16.6% and also significantly lower the continent's trade deficits. While the ACFTA can unlock the trade potential of the continent, its realization depends on the extent to which various structural bottlenecks or obstacles to trading can be addressed, of which the lack or limited state of infrastructure is one of such key obstacles. I'll use this presentation to highlight Africa's challenge with infrastructure and identify the opportunities that the continent can leverage to ensure the provision of the appropriate infrastructure to boost intra-regional trade. I'll conclude by sharing ideas on what Sub-Saharan Africa as a sub-region can do to ensure that infrastructure no longer becomes a challenge, but an opportunity for increased trade within the sub-region. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by outlining the nature of the newly established ACFTA. The ACFTA is an agreement that purposely creates a common African market, which is expected to contribute to the bigger vision of deepening economic integration, to provide greater opportunities for Africa's structural transformation, economic diversification, and development. The agreement aims to create a liberalized market for goods and contribute to the movement of natural persons and capital. To achieve the broad objectives of the ACFTA, the specific objectives that must be achieved include the progressive liberalization of trade in services, the deepening of cooperation in all matters relating to customs and trade issues, and the gradual riddance of both tariffs and non-tariff barriers. The resulting free trade area that is created presents participating countries the opportunity to take advantage of scale economies to overcome various challenges as they trade among themselves. This continent-wide free trade area agreement is thus expected to enhance regional cooperation and integration. The ACFTA agreement specifies a two-phase implementation plan to ease negotiations on the provisions and operationalize the agreement. The first phase considers trade in goods and services and involves tariff liberalization, dealing with non-tariff barriers, trade remedies, trade facilitation, through the harmonization of documents and customs cooperation, rules of origin, issues relating to transit and transit facilities, among others. With respect to trade in services, it is also concerned with air and maritime transportation, insurance coverage for tourism, and financial and banking services. The second phase deals with negotiations that relate to investment and competition policy, intellectual property rights, as well as digital trade, women and youth in trade. It should be noted that under both phase 1 and 2, trade facilitation is a key vehicle that can ensure the success of the ACFTA. Currently, there are 44 party actors. The manual to guide the ACFTA tariff concessions is ready. Almost 88% of total tariff lines under the rules of origin protocol of the ACFTA are also ready. In addition, the Secretariat is focusing on 4 areas under the trade in goods, namely pharmaceuticals and vaccines, agribusiness, automotive, and logistics and transport service. Already, the Secretariat has secured a 1 billion facility for the automotive value chain and industrialization. An adjustment fund of 1 billion has also been set aside to offset the short-term revenue losses that will result as members reduce or eliminate their tariffs. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement Systems has also been launched. That is going to allow trade in 42 different currencies on the continent. There are clear indications that the phase 2 negotiations will be concluded by September 2022. Unfortunately, however, most of the customs authorities have not passed legislative instruments to allow ACFTA tariff procedures to run smoothly. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, I will now focus on Africa's contribution to global and interregional trade and highlight why we have not done so well. In terms of global trade, we continue to be at the end in terms of we lag behind all regions of the world in our contribution to global trade. And in fact, we contribute less than 3% to global trade. Between 2014 and 2019, our contribution was on average about 2%. And you can see from the PowerPoint, our contribution is the ones that are highlighted in yellow, compared to other regions of the world where their contribution to global trade is over 60%. When it comes to intra-regional trade, we have one of the lowest globally, even though we've seen some marginal increases over the last 2 years. Inter-regional trade for Africa increased from 16% in 2018 to almost 18% in 2020. And when you look at the charts, you see clearly that we have marginally increased our share of intra-regional trade. Compared to the EU, Asia, and North America, ours is relatively lower, even though we're doing much better than Latin America and Oceania. There are various reasons that account for this. The similarities in comparative advantage implies that we will not naturally trade more among ourselves because we tend to produce similar products. But in addition, many of our African countries have small, fractured, and partly isolated markets, and the poor state of infrastructure is making trading across borders costly, hence the lower intra-regional trade. It is clear that the contribution that we are making to global trade is nothing to write home about, and it is about time that the sub-region begins to make very serious efforts at increasing its trade. And to do this, the sub-region has to harness the potential of the ACFTA. And one of the things that we need to do is to find out how we can make infrastructure more effective in facilitating trade. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, what type of infrastructure do we need for trade? The realization of the ACFTA depends to a very large extent on the various obstacles that are hampering interregional trade on the continent. And before I discuss the challenges with the infrastructure, it is important to emphasize the type of infrastructure that facilitates trade. Trade facilitation has become important in recent growth and development discourse. It refers to the reduction of non-tariff transaction costs at the border, which entails the standardization and simplification of custom procedures and administrative formalities connected to international trade. A broader definition encompasses the environment in which trade transactions occur, such as the regulatory openness, standard harmonization, and adherence to international regional rules and norms. Trade facilitation can be executed by investing in two broad types of infrastructure, namely hard and soft infrastructure. Hard infrastructure refers to the physical and tangible infrastructure that facilitates trade, such as roads, highways, ports, and railway roads. While soft infrastructure refers to information communication technology, transparency, the regulatory environment, customs management, the business climate, and other intangible institutional indicators that are regarded as tools used in stimulating trade. The impact of infrastructure on trade flows is well documented in the trade literature. There are various studies that have confirmed that trade logistics can reduce trade costs significantly and increase trade flows. In the recent paper that I did, I found that for a while, in many developing countries, trade hasn't been that good. The main reason why sub-Saharan African countries have little to show for trade is because of the lack of infrastructure on the continent. So our firms are not able to produce and compete effectively in export markets. And in a global economy that has become increasingly integrated and value chains that cross national borders more prominent, trade infrastructure that minimizes trade costs have become very necessary for competitiveness. Trade infrastructure, both hard and soft, have become crucial along the trade value chain, having an impact on transportation services, telecommunication, business services, and finance. As noted by UNTAD 2021, the poor performance of shipping and ports in developing countries, mainly as a result of lower levels of digitization and diseconomies of scale, explains why developing and especially sub-Saharan African countries are further removed or remote from global market centers. Undoubtedly, trade infrastructure enhances fiscal connectivity with both within and among countries, thereby facilitating the movements of goods and services. Prof. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, Africa's land is big enough to accommodate China, India, the United States, and most parts of Europe. Yet, intra-regional export is estimated at just about 16%, as at 2020. One of the reasons for this low turnout is the weak infrastructural connectivity between countries on the continent. Almost all estimates of the infrastructure gap point to a continent that is atomized. For instance, when you take a look at some of the indicators for infrastructure, when you look at the infrastructure in terms of transports, the trends, in terms of quantity trends, the share of paved roads in these different developing regions of the world between 1990 and 2010, you'll find out that sub-Saharan Africa has seen a decline in the road density. In other words, the percentage of roads that are tarred or paved in Africa reduced from 17% to 16%, compared to other regions of the world like the Middle East and North Africa and the East Asian Pacific region, where there has been a significant increase in the percentage of roads that are paved. And you're wondering why I'm showing this. I mean, in a sub-region where majority of our countries are landlocked, the main medium of trade is road transport. And when roads are not tarred and if we are in the rainy season like we find ourselves, it becomes much more difficult to transport goods between countries, increasing the trade costs. Apart from this, we also find out that the score that Africa has in terms of the road quality, the score starts from 0, which is the worst, to 7. And you see Africa, as compared to all the other developing regions of the world, having a much lower score on the quality of our roads. And then, when we take a look at, next. Go to the next. Yes, when you take a look at communication, in terms of the telecommunication index, the number of fixed and mobile telephones per 1,000 people. You see Africa, we used to have 3 as of 1990, and that has increased to almost 730. That is almost 0.7, compared to other regions where they even have 1.4 per person and 1.2 in other places. So relatively, when you compare ourselves to other developing regions of the world, though we've seen a marked improvement in telecommunication, we are still behind in terms of the compared to other countries. Next. Then, when it comes to internet density, the number of users per 100 persons, we see that we are also behind compared to other sub-regions of the world. And then, the fixed broadband, in terms of the number of subscriptions per 100 persons, we also find that there's not been much improvement when it comes to fixed broadband compared to other regions of the developing world. Then, in terms of electricity, even though we are doing well in terms of generating capacity, compared to South Asia, we are not doing as much as they are. But compared to other sub-regions of the developing world, we are doing much better. What is important to note is that even though this is a generating capacity, it doesn't really imply the usage. And you know, Ghana generates more electricity than it's used. So it means that we are having issues with infrastructure when it comes to road, telecom, and then railway. Now, the reason why we have this situation, particularly in the case of railway, is that most of the infrastructure that was built was done during the colonial period. And the intention was to link the sources of our natural resources, of course the mines, to our ports, so that these natural resources could be shipped to the countries of origin of our colonial masters. They were never intended to support interregional trade. And so we do not have much to talk about when it comes to rail lines connecting one country to the other on the continent. Now, due to the number of, and I've mentioned this already, due to the number of landlocked countries, road transport is the main medium of transporting goods across countries, and there is not much to show for that. With regards to our ports, Most of our ports in Africa are small, and it takes relatively more time to process goods in Africa, especially when we compare to the rest of the world. For instance, it takes less than a week to process ship cargo in Asia, Europe, and Latin America, whilst it takes about twice that time on average to do so in most African countries. The cost of handling port cargo is again higher in Africa. The African Development Bank estimates that the handling cost of ship cargo in Africa is about 50% higher when compared to the rest of the world. Now let me focus on soft infrastructure, and I'm making use of the World Bank's Logistics Performance Indicator that measures the logistics performance of countries and sub-region. The score ranges from 1 to 5, with the higher score representing a better performance. And I'm going to concentrate on 6 key dimensions of that infrastructure. Now, when you look at the average between 2007 and 2018, which is the data that has been collected by the World Bank, Ghana's sub-Saharan's ability to track and trace consignments, to know where your consignment is, lags behind all regions of the world and even below the global average of 2.9. Sub-Saharan Africa, 2.4. When it comes to the competence and quality of trade logistics services, Sub-Saharan Africa does worse than any sub-region of the world and has an average below the global average. Then, the ease of arranging competitively priced shipments shows clearly that we are behind all other regions of the world and, of course, below the global average. So is efficiency of our custom clearing processes, and then also the frequency with which shipments reach the consignee within the scheduled or expected time. So when we look at indicators with regards to, and then the last one, in terms of the quality of trade and transport-related infrastructure, we're also doing much worse than any other sub-region of this world. Quite clearly, we have a situation where even with regards to soft infrastructure, we are not doing well. There is no doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic has also caused a sharp drop in worldwide seaborne trade. Even though this has quickly recovered in the late 2020s, mostly in container and dry bulk shipping, the recovery has caused a slew of logistical issues, driving up rates and costs and lengthening delays and dwell times. Consumer prices have been affected by the higher freight rates, particularly in the least developed countries, whose consumption and production are more reliant on international trade. There is no doubt that the pandemic has resulted in a severe reduction in investment in transportation, power production, and telecommunication infrastructure. Now, the relatively poor state of our trade infrastructure explains why we also do poorly when it comes to trading across the borders. In fact, Sub-Saharan Africa ranks lowest in all the various trading across border indicators. Let me start first with the time to exports, which is the border compliance, the number of hours that you need to comply with all the processes at the border before you can export. In Africa, it takes you approximately 97 hours to be border compliant. Even though this has improved from the 107 hours in 2014, it is way above the average of 53 hours and much, much above that for the European Union, which is just 7.5 hours. It takes approximately 72 hours to be document compliant when exporting, and this is way also above the average. When it comes to the importing, Sub-Saharan African countries require approximately 127 hours to be border compliant and 96 hours to be document compliant as of 2019. This is well above the world average of 67 hours and 53 hours respectively. What are the implications of the infrastructure challenges that we have? The main implication is that it increases trade costs in Africa. So it means that it costs you more to trade across the borders in Africa than any other region of the world. In fact, among other regions, Sub-Saharan Africa spends an average, an amount of over $600 to comply with customs and inspection regulations. To further demonstrate the high trade costs, I set out to use the World Bank SCAP data to show the international trade cost between Ghana and some of its trading partners. And this table here shows you the average between 2000 and 2019. Now, for instance, it costs Ghana, so it costs a businessman on average about $166 to trade with a partner in Nigeria, which is relatively closer, but $97 to trade with a partner in South Africa, which is further away. While it costs approximately $140 to trade with the United Kingdom and $129 with the United States over the same period. And you can see that for China and other parts of the world. You find out that at times the cost of trading with a country, the East African countries from Ghana, is about 4 times the cost of trading with a country like China, which is more than 2 times the distance between Ghana and those trading partners. In the trade literature, we know that the longer the distance, the higher the trade cost. But in Sub-Saharan Africa, it has nothing to do with the distance. It has everything to do much more with our infrastructure. It is important to mention that apart from the inefficient bottlenecks, that inefficient bottleneck port operations, poor inland road quality, the slow pace of our development of our trade, transport infrastructure, low levels of ICT implementation, there are very good reasons, there are reasons why the infrastructure gap is a much bigger issue in Africa. 1, Africa has the highest number of landlocked countries in the world. 15 out of the 48 Sub-Saharan African countries are landlocked. It is the region with the highest number of small and low-income countries with limited capacity to expand infrastructure. It is a region with international trade taxes being a significant source of government revenue, and is a region with the highest number of countries that are remote from the global market centers. So what it means is that addressing the infrastructure challenge in Africa can go a long way in increasing Africa's intra-regional trade. What are the opportunities for us to harness trade infrastructure? AFTA comes with increasing economic integration and cooperation among African countries, and this should encourage huge investments in cross-border infrastructure. A cross-border infrastructure is any infrastructure that connects 2 or more countries, as well as national infrastructure that has significant cross-border impact, such as ports, railways, roads, and airports. Cross-border infrastructure provides economies with greater access to regional and global markets. There is a need for countries within the sub-region to cooperate to improve transport corridors within the continent so that they can take up the opportunities to join regional production networks and supply chains. Because when we're able to connect our firms and businesses to regional production network and supply chains, it promotes efficient production, trade competitiveness, and increases trade flows. It will therefore enable Sub-Saharan African countries to narrow their development gap with their richer trading partners. Whilst most African states are unable to support large infrastructural investment on their own. The reliance on public-private partnerships to build national and cross-border infrastructure is a viable option that countries in the region should take a look at. PPPs distribute resources, risks, responsibilities, and rewards between the public and the private sectors, allowing governments to overcome fiscal constraints and filling the funding gap in modern infrastructure. The reasons that we need to encourage PPPs include access to advanced technology and increased efficiency in project delivery, project operations, and management, as the private sector is expected to be more efficient as compared to the public sector. Various PPPs have been used in a wide range of infrastructure projects in Asia to support both hard and soft infrastructure. Fortunately, Africa's private sector has shown some potential to partner with the public sector in a wide range of projects. Involving the private sector in infrastructure development can scale up the level of services and leverage the fiscal resources to allow scarce funds to be channeled by our governments to other pressing needs. PPPs can also bring in private sector skills and expertise to augment the services that can be provided from a given investment or infrastructure facility. It should be noted that both types of trade infrastructure complement each other and deserve equal attention. And I state this because more often than not, attention has been focused on hard infrastructure. But the influence of soft infrastructure on trade flows has become more critical today than ever. Soft infrastructure in the form of modern ICT infrastructure, improved custom procedures and administration, trade rules and regulation can result in reduced trade costs and therefore making our sub-region very competitive within the global multilateral trading system. Most African countries have also gradually improved their governance structures and undertaking regulatory reforms at their borders and other maritime operations. These can be leveraged to improve intra-regional trade on the continent. For instance, most countries have separated port regulatory functions from their commercial functions. Under most of these systems, national port authorities retained regulatory oversight over the activities of the port, while the private sector entities were granted concessions by port authorities to perform warehousing, container handling, and other commercial operations. Enlisting the private sector to invest in port infrastructure and provide expertise in port operations and management has led to a considerable reduction in cargo processing times and costs, as well as increasing productivity at the ports. Technological change has created a variety of new opportunities for changing the way infrastructure is provided in almost every sector. Particularly for the service sector, microelectronic monitoring devices and non-destructive testing procedures can be used to analyze goods and services as they come in. Remotely operated pipe inspection devices, as well as the transition from analog to digital phone switching, has substantially simplified and decreased maintenance time and expenses. Digitization in logistics, which includes enhanced tracking system, digitized flow of information, artificial intelligence, and automation can be leveraged to enhance intra-regional trade on the African continent. Most of our countries are witnessing a shift in mindset, resulting from a better knowledge of the relative strengths of governments, the private sector, and the markets. And this is paving the way for infrastructure change. A good example of the mindset on the continent is the commitment by the UN Economic Commission for Africa, African Union, and the African Development Bank to work together in the development of Trans-African Highway. This network is expected to connect each of sub-Saharan Africa's major corridors by filling in infrastructure gap within the region's transport network. With the ACFTA coming into effect, Africa's bargaining power in international trade negotiations is expected to be significantly strengthened, and this can be crucial in directing investment in infrastructure. African governments can leverage this bargaining power to support long-term infrastructure that span over different countries across strategic routes. To conclude, Chair, ladies and gentlemen, while the ACFTA has the potential to significantly increase intra-African trade, this can be mostly realized through the removal of various obstacles to trade, and the lack of appropriate infrastructure is one of such. I've shown in this paper that our infrastructure gap does not only exist with hard infrastructure, but also soft infrastructure in form of excessive checkpoints, burdensome administrative procedures, and inefficient processing at our border crossing. Because within a continent we rely so much on road infrastructure for transports, there is a need for us to encourage PPPs to build that infrastructure and to ensure that the opportunities that we can take advantage of to leverage on to increase our inter-regional trade is not sacrificed. African leaders should not only pay lip service to a successful implementation of the ACFTA, but should support the building of trade infrastructure to enhance intra-regional trade. It is only when Africa's trade infrastructure improves to the level of global standards that the enormous benefits of the ACFTA will be realized. Otherwise, Africa will be putting the cart before the horse, and that will definitely not increase intra-regional trade. It will not provide the greater opportunities for Africa's structural transformation, economic diversification, and development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Iwo Jackson. Let's give another round of applause. It is indeed shocking that it costs almost 4 times to trade with East Africa than with, Cote d'Ivoire, or even with the UK. There's a lot to be done, and infrastructure is a critical piece. And our speaker kind of alluded to both the hard one and the soft one. And our next speaker is going to focus on another of a key soft infrastructure that lubricates the whole trading system. And it's really my pleasure to introduce the Governor of the Bank of Ghana. Dr. Anderson and I used to sit next to each other at the first Monetary Policy Committee meetings. And he was always the guy who had the insight about the interpretation of the data and what the data meant. And some of his people are here today. And they were the people who used to help the MPC really navigate the early years. And so I'm not surprised that that team is now governing the bank. I congratulate you all. Dr. Ernest Kwabena Yedu Addison earned a PhD in economics from McGill University in Montreal, Canada in June 1993, with specialization in monetary economics, economic development, and international economics. Prior to this, he had gained an MPhil in economics and politics from Cambridge University as an ODA scholar. Dr. Anderson graduated earlier with a BA honors degree in June 1986 from the University of Ghana. Over the period of his career at the central bank, Dr. Addison has taken several central banking training programs in financial programming and policy, central bank reserves management with the IMF, the Swiss Central Bank, Bank of England, and the Bank of Israel, to name a few. Upon graduation at Legon, he taught as a teaching assistant in the economics department, and following that, a graduate teaching assistant at the Department of Economics at McGill University. Dr. Addison worked extensively in the economic policy arena, working with a group of consultants on the privatization of the Kingston Harbor in Jamaica. He later on joined the Bank of Ghana, where he rose to become the head of research department of the bank from 2003 to 2011. During this period, Dr. Addison played key roles in the decision-making processes, participated in several discussions with the IMF World Bank teams on Ghana's financial programs, and was a core member of the Bank of Ghana's delegation to high-level policy meetings on the Ghanaian economy. He also chaired several committees, including the International Task Force on WAMZ, the West African Monetary Zone, Economic Policy Coordinating Committee, the Technical Committee on Redenomination of the CD, and the Task Force on Second Monetary Zone Project. Dr. Addison took some time off and joined the African Development Bank as a lead economist, regional operations, 2011 to 2013, and then as lead regional economist, Southern African Resource Center from 2014 to 2016, where he led the policy dialogue on the Southern African region of the African Development Bank. With this illustrious career, spanning over 30 years of experience, working in the broader areas of public service with a focus on economic development, monetary policy formulation and implementation, and macroeconomic surveillance, Dr. Addison was appointed governor of the Bank of Ghana on April 3, 2017, by His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana. With his deep knowledge and experience in financial markets, foreign exchange markets, and sound macroeconomic policy, Governor Addison has demonstrated strong leadership, management, and policy skills, and inspired confidence and credibility both within the bank and throughout the financial sector. Under his leadership, the Bank of Ghana has achieved several successes in the pursuit of macroeconomic and financial stability, following the implementation of prudent monetary policies to bring inflation down to single digits and widespread policy and regulatory reforms, including major recapitalization efforts over the past 3 years. This has cleaned up the financial sector, strengthened governance and the supervisory framework, and repositioned the sector to undertake its primary role of financial intermediation for the growth and development of the country. In addition to his governorship role, Dr. Addison served as the chair of the Board of Governors of the IMF and the World Bank at the 2020 annual meetings of the World Bank and the IMF in Washington, D.C. He is currently co-chair of the Financial Stability Board, a regional consultative group for the Sub-Saharan Africa, and chairman of the Board of Directors of the Ghana International Bank, and a member of the Ghana Cocoa Board, among others. Dr. Addison is going to talk to us today about boosting the African Continental Free Trade Area, the role of payment and settlement systems, and he's a master at that. So please give him a hand.
Thank you very much. Chairperson Professor K. Opokunti, the Vice President Arts of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Executive Secretary of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Council members and fellows of the Academy, colleagues from the Bank of Ghana, fellow speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to express my gratitude to the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences for the kind invitation to participate in this forum. Let me applaud the Academy for its pioneering role of promoting studies, extension and dissemination of knowledge in the arts and sciences. Since its establishment in 1959, the Academy has collaborated with other national institutions to research on important issues bordering on the sciences and humanities, which have shaped the public policy discourse and contributed to national development. This year's Public Forum, under the broad theme, African Continental Free Trade Area, Challenges and Prospects, is another demonstration of the Academy's commitment. The previous speakers have covered other broad aspects of the theme, and this address will focus on boosting the ACFTA, the role of payments and settlement systems. Mr. Vice President of the Academy, one would wonder why would a topic such as this be so important at this time. Since 2020, the global economy has faced a series of shocks. Just at the time that most of the world appeared to be moving past the acute phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, with the global economy rebounding to 6.1% growth in 2021, after a contraction of 3.1% in 2020, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has compounded global prospects and worsened supply chain disruptions, exerted cost pressures, and resulted in elevated inflationary pressures all over. The recent lockdowns in key trade and manufacturing hubs in China due to the onset of another COVID-19 wave also compounded global supply disruptions and has weighed down on post-COVID economic recovery. Just last month, the update of the World Economic Outlook by the International Monetary Fund projected some moderation in global growth from 6.1% in 2021 to 3.6% in 2022 and 2023. Growth in sub-Saharan Africa is also projected to soften to 3.8% in 2022 from 4.5% in 2021, driven by war-induced commodity price shocks and elevated global inflation. Ghana has experienced a fair share of the prevailing global economic conditions. Inflation today was estimated at 27.6% in May, from just 12.6% at the end of 2021, driven by both food and non-food inflation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the macroeconomic effects of the pandemic were broadly categorized into what is known as the 3Ds, the issue of deglobalization, debt overhang, and digitalization. First, the drive for globalization took a hit during the pandemic with the imposition of lockdowns and travel restrictions to contain the spread of the virus, while protectionist sentiments pushed multilateralism to the back foot. Secondly, sovereign debt levels have increased astronomically, especially in developing countries, following the implementation of pandemic-related fiscal stimulus packages and accommodative monetary policies to moderate the adverse effects of the pandemic. Third, the pandemic protocols of fiscal distancing rules and virtual interactions provided an added impetus to the adoption of digital technologies. It has been argued that in the face of these challenges, Africa can speed up its economic recovery by focusing on regional integration, infrastructural development, and targeted digitization. This brings to light the relevance and the timeliness of the ongoing forum of the African Continental Free Trade Area, Challenges and Prospects. Broadly, the ACFTA aims to eliminate or reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers among the 54 African countries to speed up intra-African trade and improve trade performance in the global market. There is a view that African countries can only be competitive globally if they are competitive regionally. Therefore, the ACFTA, by the creation of a single large market for goods and services, creates opportunities to promote industrial development through diversification and regional value chain development. The agreement is expected to enhance diversification of industrial products, develop regional value chains, and help facilitate regional integration as well as cross-border payments. Recently, I had a few discussions with one of our bank CEO and discussing the performance of the manufacturing sector, and you'll be surprised to hear that they are seeing more and more of Ghanaian manufacturing establishments beginning to venture into other markets in Africa, and she thought that the most resilient manufacturing firms were those that are taking advantage of the ACFTA. So we are making progress in that sense. With its continent-wide advantage, its ability to enhance competition, the ACFTA would help Africa to integrate into the global economy and can be an important tool to reduce poverty and promote economic inclusion. The World Bank estimates that the implementation of the ACFTA would provide impetus for lifting an additional 30 million Africans from extreme poverty and 60 million from moderate poverty. Real income has been estimated to increase by 7%, or almost 450 billion US dollars. The volume of total exports is projected to increase by nearly 29% by 2035, and intra-African exports are also estimated to almost increase by 81%, while exports to non-African countries are expected to increase by 19%. These are very ambitious targets if you view the infrastructural constraints that we just saw in the previous presentation, and it would be good to make an assessment in terms of the evaluation on how far the arrangement is heading towards these targets. Mr. Vice President of the Academy, an efficient and resilient payment and settlements infrastructure is fundamental to the promotion of intra-African trade. A supportive payments and settlement system can be used as a strategic tool to enhance and facilitate regional integration, increase competitiveness, and improve Africa's position in the international financial system. A strong and well-regulated African financial infrastructure could deepen the benefits of intra-regional trade, eliminate the use of third currencies for settlement, improve liquidity management of firms, and reduce transaction costs. Beyond the improved speed and lowering of cost of transactions, an integrated African payment and settlement system would support the ACFTA by mitigating risks associated with intra-African trade payments and facilitate efficient functioning of African financial markets. Thus, to boost intra-African trade, there is the need to invest in robust payments and settlement system infrastructure. Over the last 2 decades, Ghana's payment system has been transformed, underpinned by innovation, competition, and digitalization. The journey started in 2002 with major changes in the payment ecosystem. First, the real-time gross settlement system was launched, which provided the platform for financial institutions to undertake real-time wholesale electronic transfer of funds. Next, the bank facilitated the passage of the now repealed Payment Systems Act 2003, which established the Ghana Interbank Payment and Settlement System that ushered in the retail electronic payment community. Since then, there have been significant changes to the payment system landscape, with the introduction of the national switch, the check code line clearing, the automated clearinghouse systems, the biometric smart card system, the e-switch, Ghana Instant Pay, and the passage of the Payment Systems and Services Act 2019, which paved the way for the non-banking sector, including financial technology firms, to operate in the payment ecosystem. The mobile money sector has also witnessed tremendous growth during this time, supporting the financial inclusion objective and convenience in terms of facilitating funds transfer, utility bill payments, as well as remittance transfers. The bank's strategy for payment systems development over the years is to foster competition among industry players with a view to drive innovation, competition, and provide consumers with choice at lower costs of transactions. An example of this is the bank's step to bring in the financial technology firms under its regulatory purview, which has led to the expansion of digital services and helped bring the unbanked into the formal financial system. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, notwithstanding the maturity of the national payment system, however, transactions between Ghana and other African countries may have to go first to a third country, which is not likely to be based on the African continent. These movements of funds and settlement processes involving banks that are outside Africa raises the transaction cost for cross-border payments. For instance, data from the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, SWIFT, shows that 48% of Africa's settlement processes occur in countries outside Africa, and the US dollar remains the dominant trade currency. Cross-border payments are slow, can be expensive and opaque. We find banks having to use correspondent bank relationships outside Africa to get funds from a payer to a payee on the continent. This leads to high transaction costs for trade in Africa, including transfer fees, bank charges, and SWIFT charges. Faced with such correspondent bank challenges and to ease the intra-regional trade, African economies have pursued various regional integration initiatives to lower cross-border payment costs. These include initiatives to introduce either a common currency or a common payment platform to foster intra-regional trades. In 2004, the West African Economic and Monetary Union, the UMOA, launched a regional gross settlement system. The STAR UMOA connects direct participants through the SWIFT network or the private network of the BCAO. Participants in that system include financial institutions, the Central Depository, the Waiumu Interbank Electronic Banking Group, and the West African Development Bank. The Southern African Development Community region dominates Africa's regional payment system in terms of transaction volumes. The SADC Integrated Regional Electronic Settlement System, now SADC RTGS, was developed in 2013 to facilitate funds transfer for cross-border payments among SADC countries to promote trade within the region. This process eliminated the need for correspondent banks and lower transaction costs. Currently, all the 16 countries except Comoros have joined the SADC RTGS. The SADC Banking Association, in collaboration with BankServe Africa, as part of the SADC Payment Integration Roadmap, has also developed a low-value cross-border payment solution for the SADC region. Participants within this platform include the central banks, authorized banks, and non-banks. Since its inception, the RTGS has processed 2.2 million transactions valued at 8.56 billion rands. In 2014, the East African Community Payment and Settlements System Integration Project was launched. The overall objective of this project was to create a robust, integrated regional wholesale and retail payment and settlement system to improve the efficiency of cross-border payments. Transactions are carried out and settled in the EAC local currencies through their linked real-time cross-settlement systems and by holding reciprocal bilateral accounts with each central bank. The system also requires commercial banks to pre-fund payments with deposits at the central bank. Another key development is the regional payment and settlement system of the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa that offers a choice of payment in either euros or dollars. However, the REPS has been rarely used for wholesale or trade transactions. The volumes of transactions settled through the REPS cross-border payment systems continues to remain low. In advancing the development of cross-border payments, the West African Monetary Zone in 2013 initiated the ECOWAS Payment and Settlement Systems Project as part of the major component for the launch of the ECO. With the support of the Afri-Exim Bank, 6 central banks in the West African Monetary Zone linked their RTGS with the broad objective of facilitating cross-border payments that are initiated in the payer's local currency and received by the beneficiary in local currency in real time. The resulting interbank obligation on a net basis would be settled in US dollars. The Afri-Exim Bank initiative, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, which started in the WAMS, is expected to be rolled out as a continent-wide payment system infrastructure. It is expected to facilitate remittances, offer security settlement, and provide opportunity for point-of-sale and automated teller machine transactions. Direct participants of the PAPs are the national central banks and regulated financial institutions as well as payment service providers. At present, PAPs has undertaken successful integration from test and development environment to the production environment for all the 6 countries of the WAMS, namely Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. Ghana, Nigeria, and Gambia have successfully carried out controlled live transactions. Nigeria, for example, sent and received daily transactions to and from Ghana and Gambia successfully, while Ghana and Gambia also sent and received daily transactions to and from Nigeria successfully. The time taken to complete an end-to-end transaction using the instant payment system was established to be on average 7 seconds out of 120 seconds allocated for a complete transaction. Cross-border payment systems are not easy to implement. First, cross-border governance arrangements differ. Secondly, laws across different jurisdictions may differ, and multiple AML-CFT regimes, including KYC requirements, can become a challenge. To ensure that there is a single source of primary data for the conduct of customer due diligence on African entities, financial institutions, corporates, and SMEs, the Afri-Exim Bank has also set up the MANSA repository platform. It is the first digital customer due diligence platform of its kind in Africa and conceived and developed to address compliance issues, promote data quality and coverage in Africa, and to minimize the difficulties faced by African entities in accessing funds from international banks. Beyond the minimization of difficulties African entities faced in accessing funds, the platform is expected to reduce compliance costs, facilitate intra-African trade, and serve as an African investment hub. While the integration of sub-regional zonal payment systems has translated into some progress in Africa's cross-border payment journey, it has also faced some challenges. The size of national markets, limited opportunities to create economies of scale, an enormous gap between the reality on the ground and aspirations stimulated informal integration arrangements has not inured to the promotion of intra-regional trade among these regional blocs. The economic community of Central African states, for instance, has the least intra-regional trade of less than 2%, followed by the Arab Maghreb Union at 4%. Common market for Eastern and Southern Africa and the economic community of West African states are estimated at 16%. Intra-regional trade among countries of the SADC is estimated at 20%. The low level of intra-African trade is also attributed to the lack of diversification on account of overconcentration on similar primary commodities, lack of value addition, non-inclusion of the informal sector trade, as well as lack of regional financial infrastructure. Further, integration of payment systems at the regional and continental level is hampered by the fact that member countries are at different payment system levels, with sometimes distinct priorities, different economic policies, limited payments regulatory frameworks, disparate IT infrastructure, and limited cross-border payments exposure, and without harmonized standards and regulations in the various jurisdictions. Also, legacy and proprietary systems are inefficient and costly on account of time and resources required to promote interoperability. Furthermore, the inability to link even developed national payment infrastructures within the various regional economic communities remains a drag on cross-border payment infrastructure development in Africa. Indeed, most African countries have fairly developed domestic payment infrastructure, such as the RTGS systems, the national switches, the code line transaction systems, and the vibrant payment and emerging fintech firms, as well as the vibrant mobile money sectors. These national payment systems are not linked to other national payments infrastructure to facilitate cross-border payments and therefore cannot support regional trade. The way forward. While the future for ACFTA looks promising, the barriers to cross-border payments, including cost, speed, access, and transparency, needs to be addressed in a collective manner. The Financial Stability Board in October 2020 recommended the following measures for enhancing cross-border payments. First, Africa needs to improve on the existing payment infrastructures and arrangements to support the requirements of cross-border payments. Technical and operational improvements to existing domestic and regional payments infrastructures that facilitate cross-border payment need to be made continuously. Second, the various regional payment systems, including the SADC RTGS, PAPS, REPS, the UMWA, the GIM UMWA, and the CIRIS, need to be integrated to enable each system to communicate with the others. Resolution of these issues will enable frictions culminating from different operating hours, high transaction costs, weak competition, and access regimes to be addressed. Third, commitment to a joint public-private sector vision to enhance cross-border payments will be an important strategy that could help Africa realize the true economic potential of the ACFTA. A common vision and agreed targets could encourage market participants and policymakers to work together to enhance cross-border payments. Lastly, the harmonization of regulations supervision and oversight frameworks could also mitigate challenges stemming from multi-jurisdictional nature of cross-border payments. To enhance data quality, straight-through processing, common message formats, including conversion and mapping from legacy formats to use common protocols for data exchange. Indeed, given the right policies, Africa's collective efforts at integrating existing national payment systems could enable African firms to innovate, invest, and create job opportunities. Together with digitalization, an integrated payment system would help Africa foster convergence of institutional frameworks and create a more effective regional financing ecosystem. Additionally, an integrated payment and settlement system would promote efficiency in regional trade by facilitating the smooth flow of payments, underpinning economic activity, and fostering transparency and efficiency in intra-African trade. Mr. Vice President of the Academy, Council members, fellows, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, let me emphasize that payment and settlement system is critical for enhancing intra-African trade and investment, the key objective of the ACFTA. Through the Association of African Central Banks, working groups on payment system, the Bank of Ghana is collaborating with other central banks to provide common solutions to the various challenges confronting payment systems development in Africa. Collectively, we are working to deliver an integrated and interoperable continental payment system by linking all the regional payment systems, leveraging on the PAP's connectivity to enhance the power of digital payment for value creation. I wish to thank the Academy once again for offering me the platform to share my views on this important topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor. Let's give him another round of applause. It is clear that a lot is happening way before the FCTA. They are thinking ahead. And I think practical issues of payments and the idea that the payment has to go to correspondent banks has brought up the need for the creating the regional payment systems and integrating them. And I thank the governor for giving us a perspective on what they've been doing. Thank you very much. Today's session has, normally would have been doing question and answer section, but today we decided that there's going to be a panel discussion where we shall invite two others to join us to do that. Before I do that, let me also remind ourselves that this is also a celebration, that we are celebrating Universal Merchant Bank, the 50th anniversary. And the Academy is very pleased to partner with UMB to organize this function. And it's been very, very insightful and very productive. We thank you very much. So I'm going to introduce the panel. And then after that, Professor Helen Yita and I will take our seats, and then the panel will sit here and have a tete-a-tete, right? Nana Jumo Bene is the CEO of UMB Bank. He has considerable local international expertise in banking. He worked briefly with Merchant Bank Limited after his graduate studies in economics and philosophy from the University of Ghana in June 1996. In September 1998, Nana Jumo moved to join Barclays Bank on Barclays Bank PLC's International Business Leadership Program designed to develop business leaders equipped with global and Pan-African experience. Whilst with Barclays, he had the opportunity to work in various management roles across a number of countries in Africa and the UK. His 15-year career with Barclays Bank spanned leadership roles across Africa. He was appointed as head of retail banking in Uganda and was part of the management team for Barclays in that country. There he led the retail team to expand the footprint and portfolio of customers for the bank. He moved to Kenya as East African Regional Sales Manager with oversight over consumer sales machinery in the bank's East African businesses. Subsequently, in 2003, Nana Juma was appointed as Director of the SME Local Business Segment for Barclays Africa, based in Johannesburg, South Africa, with responsibility for the bank's SME strategy for Africa. In 2005, Nana Juma moved to London to work in corporate banking in Barclays PLC as Sales Director for International Trade and Cash Solutions. In 2007, Nana returned to Barclays Bank Ghana as Consumer Banking Director and is credited with consolidating the gains in the bank's consumer banking business post the bank's rapid expansion of the franchise that was undertaken between 2006 and 2007. Nana Juma joined Stanbic Bank Ghana Limited as Executive Director for Personal and Business Banking in October 2013. There he led the team in significantly growing market share and profitability for the bank's personal and business banking franchise over the last 7 years. Nana holds an executive MBA from London Business School. He's also a member of the International Academy of Retail Banking. So he'll be one of our panelists. Nana, we appreciate you being here. The second panelist is Mr. John Appiah, CEO of eTransact. Let's recognize him. John Appiah is a well-respected professional with extensive international experience across private equity, technology, communications, government, and diplomacy. Mr. Appiah is the Chief Executive Officer of eTransact, Ghana's pioneering digital payment solution provider, which is listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and has footprints across the United Kingdom and several African countries. Prior to his role, Mr. Appiah had served as the top West African diplomat with the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council, the Commonwealth body accredited to the Commonwealth Secretariat and created by 54 Commonwealth heads of states to promote trade, enterprise, and investment across the economies of the Commonwealth and its 2.4 billion citizens. In this role as Commonwealth Chief of Mission across Ghana, Sierra Leone, Gambia, and Cameroon, Mr. Appiah has facilitated foreign direct investment into Ghana, provided a platform for Ghanaian private sector organizations to access foreign markets and trade, and contributed to the combined GDP of the Commonwealth, which rose from $10.4 trillion in 2017 to $13.1 trillion in 2021, and is expected to rise to $19.5 trillion by 2027. Mr. Appiah's previous senior positions have included senior strategist and advisor to data analytics pioneers, Cambridge Analytica, regional director for the Royal Commonwealth Society across 19 African countries, director of Indonesian commodity trader Bayumban Blora Pertiwi, PT, and SCO with Her Majesty's Office for Civil Society in the United Kingdom. Presently, he is chairman of 3 organizations: Interstandard Group, a boutique private equity organization in the United Kingdom, Adinkra Bootmakers, a Ghanaian manufacturer of military bootwear, and Focal Point Pictures, a motion picture production company in the United Kingdom. He's a product of Anumble and Achimota primary schools in Achimota and the Presbyterian Boys Secondary School, Legon. He holds a graduate and postgraduate degrees and qualifications across social sciences, finance and technology from the University of Oxford and the George School of Business, University of Cambridge. Mr. Appiah is a member of the Institute of Directors, UK. He'll be joining us in a few minutes. And then we are pleased to have as moderator for the panel discussion, Mr. Winston Amoah. Winston Amoah is currently a host of the Super Morning Show on Joy FM. Winston has an MA in International Journalism from the prestigious School of Journalism, Media and Cultural Studies of Cardiff University in Wales, where he got interested in reporting finance, economics, and business. When he returned to Ghana in 2009, he joined Sky Media Group in Takoradi. In 2015, he joined Media General as host of Sunrise Morning Show on 3FM and host of Hot Issues on TV3. In order to have a better understanding of the economy and the country's finances, Winston pursued an MBA in Accounting and Finance at the University of Professional Studies, Accra, where he graduated in 2020. Winston has moderated many programs, including Graphic Business / Stanbic Bank Breakfast Meetings, Imani Lecture on the African Continental Free Trade Area, Imani Forum on Taxation. His current interest is in fiscal decentralization, and is currently researching the impact of fiscal decentralization on local economic development. So that will be our moderator for the panel discussion. Let's give him a hand. We invite him. So with that, Prof. Vita and I will take our seat.
I don't take journalist questions.
So he's going to sit in for you?
Yeah.
All right, very good. That's Mr. Otu. Yeah, Otu. But I don't have your bio to tell them.
Oh, it's okay.
All right, sure. All right, great. So we start. Please come up.
Thank you very much. 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 Thank you.
I first met UMB when I was at the crossroads of my business. I had a serious problem, and UMB has made it possible for me to still stand today. How did they do this? They did not work and put me in a box. They looked at me as an individual and got a product for me which helped me to survive the period. And I'm happy that they are still here, and I understand why they are here. Banks should look at it and see how they can also go that way to be able
And
to meet.
let me start off with you, Professor Ebo-Texon. I mean, talking about, harnessing infrastructure to boost intra-Africa trade. You talked about the soft and the hard. You touched very much on the soft, but in talking about the hard, one of the things you said was the fact that many of the African countries have limited capacity to expand infrastructure. You also made it very clear that we had a lot of landlocked countries, and so building our infrastructure is key. Now, you talked about how we can resort to PPP in doing that. The last time I checked, the Public Investment and Assets Division of the Ministry of Finance has been discussing PPP, and they have some projects listed there. Over the past 8 years, for instance, we have talked about the dualization of Accra-Takoradi Road. That's something that has not happened. Realistically, as you talk about the problems we face with finances in Africa, can we embark on the infrastructural development, particularly the hard one that you talk about? Where are we going to get the money from?
Yeah, thank you, Winston. If you look at most of African countries, even our capital expenditure that is supposed to go into that type of infrastructure, most of our countries budget and spend all the money on the recurrent expenditure, and if you have to borrow to fund the excess. So invariably, we are not able to commit a lot of resources to building infrastructure. And these days that the financial markets have become much more punitive to countries like Ghana and other countries, it's about time we begin to think about allowing the private sector to raise the resources to build that infrastructure and possibly run the infrastructure over time to make up for whatever investment has been put in that. We cannot keep on relying on our governments to build that infrastructure we need. And when I talk about cross-border infrastructure, I mean infrastructure that is cutting across countries.
Sure.
And if you take West Africa, for instance, most of the countries that in West Africa are very poor, small countries. I mean, they might not be able to commit enough of their domestic fiscal resources to building the needed infrastructure that we need. So we need the private sector to come in. Yes, we've tried our hands at some of them. You don't see it coming true, but that is the only solution we have now if you are going to expand our infrastructure to the level of the global trends. And not until we do that. There are other countries that are trying to go for using their natural resources to bargain to get a country like China to do that. I know Uganda and some parts of East Africa, infrastructure has been built through that sort of. But I believe strongly that the African private sector can help, and we need to encourage more of those projects.
Now, in helping and in encouraging them, you've talked about managing it so they could recoup their investments. How do they recoup the investments you've talked about?
I mean, so if we talk about road networks, I mean, one way in which you can recoup is to toll the roads. I mean, so obviously if the roads have been made very well and transportation is going to move smoothly, I don't think that those who carry goods across borders would mind paying something to facilitate that movement. But where we have bad roads, where it costs a lot for goods to be transported across, especially to our landlocked countries. I mean, imagine taking a truck from Accra to the northern region, and at times you get to Konongo and there's too much traffic there. There is no route for you to I mean, I remember once I traveled to Kumasi, and on our way, a truck with cocoa had broken down. The road was blocked for almost 2-3 hours. The transit time in carrying goods across our borders is part of the reason why trading across our borders becomes more expensive. So we can get the private sector to build roads and toll the roads to recoup their investment. So it's a way we need to look at that, because I mean, in the US, for instance, if you need to use the highways and so on and so forth, the roads are tolled, you pay for them. The roads have to be maintained. And if our governments are not in the position to fund that, we need to look at the private sector to make sure that we give them the necessary support to be able to put those infrastructure in place and then run infrastructure to recoup their investments so that we can all take advantage of that to improve trade within the sub-region.
How about air cargo, using air transport?
I think that for trade in goods, air cargo is not the most efficient way to do it. I mean, ideally, if we had the coastal line through the ports is the best way to do that, because of the huge amount of goods that you are looking to transport. So air cargo is not very efficient, unlike road transport. So if you get the roads or rail line, right, if you get the railroads to be working and we can connect countries, that is one other cheap way to transport goods across countries. But I will not say airline cargo is something that we should.
Okay, let me get to the CEO of UMB. Because during the AFDB meetings in Ghana this year, one of the things that came up, I happened to be in a session where the CEO of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center was talking about Ghana. One of the banks present, would you be willing to fund infrastructure development in the country. Now, as a bank that is there is for the Ghanaian business, supporting SMEs, and many of these SMEs are expected to even benefit from the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Would you be prepared, for instance, to facilitate the construction of some of this infrastructure to make it easy for these businesses?
Thank you very much. I think for us, or for most financiers, the key question you want to answer for yourself is, what is the value that you are seeking to unlock? And I think one of the key issues we have when we think about financing of these trade routes is the fact that a lot of the trade at the moment is very informal, which makes it very difficult to quantify. So an example is, if you were to go to Malata on one of the weekends, you see huge trailers of traders who've come from Burkina Faso. They are there for maybe 3 days, fill these trailers, and then they drive up north into Burkina Faso. How much do they spend? How is the money transported? It's all outside the formal system. You go to Doma, they sell a lot of poultry across the border. How much do they spend? So for the person coming into finance, they need to be able to have how they are able to recoup. And therein lies this desire that we have systems in place that can follow the trade and attract the funds, so that whoever is investing is relatively confident. Tolling is one way, as Prof has said, but imagine if you had a payment system where the cash sort of flows through to enable deductions to be made even while the cash is sort of moving. So those are the sort of areas that the system can help to fix, to enable us to be able to now realistically talk to development agencies, development banks, ECOWAS Investment Bank, to put some sort of structures in place for us to fund some of these significant infrastructure projects. Until we solve those issues, it's very difficult to then put together something or a proposal to be able to finance some of these initiatives.
I see you nodding, Professor Texan, but of course there's a caveat. Until we solve the fundamental issues, we probably may be at the same place, won't we?
I didn't hear what you said the last.
I said, while I saw you nodding, Mr. Bennett makes the point that yes, they'll be willing to help, but there's a caveat. We need to solve a few issues. And until we do that, looks like we may just be at the same place.
So if you listen to me carefully, my conclusion was that African governments should move beyond just paying lip service to the fact that we are going to establish an African free trade area, to getting down to look at the sort of things that they need to do, the commitments that need to be made to actualize the benefits of the AFTA. And like I said to you, I mean, the governments do not have resources. The fact that we are even going to move away the tariffs is going to be a reduction in government revenue. I mean, no doubt about that. So government itself will have challenges with their resources. The only way this can be done is to encourage the private sector. And if we can put in place institutions and regulations to ensure that the private sector would be able to recoup their investment, I'm sure, like Nana Bena said, it's something that we would love to do. But unless these processes are really put clearly on the table for the investor to know that, yes, I'm going to be able to toll this road for the next 20, 30 years and get back my investment, then we are not going to make a headway. So we need to move beyond the lip service. I mean, Africa, we've talked about big things before. I mean, as far as in Nkrumah's time, we're talking about big things like we are saying now. But the political commitment to get some of these things through. One other thing that I forgot to mention when you asked me was the value for money. I mean, at what value do we put up those roads? That is one of the most critical things in Africa. At what value do we build roads? If we take corruption aside, could we have been better to build longer routes than we are paying for now. If we allow the private sector to do this and there's effective monitoring, I think that will be better. We'll get value for money in terms of the roads that are built than what you have currently, where some contracts are inflated and so on and so forth, and you don't get value for the roads that we build. Yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Professor Ebo-Texon. Let me get to you, John, up here. Now, when the governor was presenting his speech, he made a point about cross-border payment systems not being easy to implement. How can we make them easy to implement?
Thank you, Winston. I think before I get to that question, which I'd like you to repeat for me again, I would just like to add to what Professor Texon and Nana Bene were saying. I think the issue of infrastructure is very important, and actually Professor Texon broke it down into hard and soft. But I think I'll go even deeper to break it down into physical, social, and digital. The physical, I believe, is roads, seaports, airports. The social is more health and education. And the digital is what we're going to be talking about, PAPs. And I think, for me, infrastructure, the problem of infrastructure is very continental. And so the approach is a continental approach, where a lot of the time you find out that governments have all been working in silo to solve their infrastructure projects. So Ghana alone has about 1.2 billion budget per year for infrastructure, but that's not enough, because as a whole, within Africa, over the next 10 years, we'll need about $1.5 trillion to be able to fill that infrastructure gap. And as Professor Texon said, and Nana Bene said as well, I think it's about finding how we can empower the private sector to deliver these projects. But I think the most important thing is to recognize how we can bring in foreign direct investment to help to develop these projects, because all around the world, private sector are the ones who've led in the development of infrastructure projects. In the United States, you had Rockefeller, who helped in the creation of the railroad system in 1869. That was privately led. So I think it's about seeing how, in terms of the projects that we have, infrastructure projects, how we can make it investment ready for banks like UMB, who do an amazing job, to be able to support outside investors who want to help with these infrastructure projects. Because currently, only about 2% of the aggregate foreign direct investment comes into Africa. That's not enough. So it's about finding out what are the hurdles that stopped this foreign direct investment coming into Africa. Project risk. A lot of our projects are not bankable. A lot of our projects are not investment ready. So we need banks and other institutions to help make these infrastructure projects investment ready. Currency risk. The volatility of our currencies is a problem. If an investor is going to invest in an infrastructure project and it's a PPP project over 15 years, how are they going to get their money back? And the last one is probably exit risk. Most companies I know who've come into Africa worry about how they can exit when that 10-year is done. So I think there's important things when we talk about the infrastructure gap, because the physical infrastructure gap is very closely juxtaposed to the digital one, which is the payment systems. And unless they go hand in hand, because as Professor Texon said, it was a colonial problem. Their main focus was on how to take out gold and other minerals. And the whole idea wasn't on Africa being united, because that's not what they wanted. So we have to find ways in which we improve that physical infrastructure as well as the social infrastructure and digital infrastructure. So can I have your question again, please? So
my question is simply the fact that when the governor was presenting his speech, he talked about how cross-border payments are not easy to implement. And I want to find out from you how we can make it easy to implement.
Well, I think PAPS is an excellent way in which we can make it easier to implement, because the problem we have where we lose 5 billion by, if someone in Ghana trying to buy something in Zambia, the currency has to be converted usually to the US dollar and then converted back to the Zambian currency. But with PAPS, you have central banks dealing with central banks, which makes it cheaper and quicker. So I think PAPS for me is an excellent tool. At the policymaker level, it's an excellent tool because it allows financial inclusion for us to be able to actually incorporate the informal economy in GDP figures. For banks like Nana Benes, UMB, PAPS is excellent because it actually allows you to decrease your liquidity thresholds. For fintechs like us, we are most interested in the last mile. So PAPS actually helps us by making it easier to interact with our customers across different countries.
Great, and very soon we'll be giving the chance to all of you to ask any questions that you have, because I'm told I have 40 minutes. I think we've spent about 20 minutes already. So let me get to Mr. Otu. Now, during the commercial launch of PAPS, which was held in Ghana, the plan was that after the launch, we were going to move to discussions with other central banks on the continent and regional payment platforms to ensure bulk connections. Now, what I want to find out from you, if you know, is where we currently are when it comes to liaising or dealing with other central banks and the bulk connections.
Well, I think you heard the governor's speech clearly. He did outline the set of systems that we have put in place to deal with cross-border trading. He just talked about PAPS, and I think from what the governor said, where we are now is to ensure that the systems that we have in place begin to talk to each other. So the systems will have to talk to each other. The central banks will need to have systems that ensure that payments between countries are settled. This is an ongoing project, and the central bank is following through to make sure that in the end all these things fit together more nicely.
Yes.
Yes. If I can just sort of make a case for the importance, following from what John is saying and what Philip is saying about what the regulators across the banks are doing. You see, we sit here, especially after COVID. A lot of us are ordering stuff online from China using card payments, and it gets to us. We know that Kenya produces flowers, and so does Rwanda. The flowers go to Netherlands, and we then buy from Netherlands. Kenya Airways flies into Accra, so does Rwanda Air. So what prevents us from cutting out the middleman who is in Netherlands? And so once we can get the payment systems to sort of talk to each other, then we can get the fintechs to start to now innovate in ways in which you can put the traders together, because they know they can receive their money. So I think the central banks have done the framework. It's now left for players like ourselves. So for example, UMB, we're very keen to become a digital first bank. And it's because of issues like this. If you go to Uganda, for example, every Ghanaian who's been to Uganda knows that if you fill your suitcase with African prints, you finish selling them within a week. Because the African textiles are very popular. If there's a way we can unlock that, we can also start an export, if you like, of some of the textiles that go there. But most of the time, what seems to prevent a lot of that happening is how the payment system sort of goes through. So there's a clear business case, if you like, to do it. I think for us, the next step would be to look to the regulator to find ways to motivate or to give some sort of breaks that drive the innovation in that particular, or those particular areas. In Ghana, we're lucky because we have the Financial Innovation Department in the central bank. I think if we work together and start to make it worth the while of the fintechs and the banks to actually innovate a bit more aggressively in those areas, working with the likes of GAAS very quickly, so that now we can start to do some of these simple things because there's already infrastructure built there, ready. And then we can start from there, baby steps, but with the low-hanging fruits. And then from there, we can then build onto the top ones as well.
Okay, Prof.
Yeah, listen, I wanted to add to what Nana Bene said. The reason why the flowers would not come from Kenya to Ghana is because of the data that I showed at the end of my presentation.
Sure.
It's cheaper for the exporter in Kenya to send the flowers to the Netherlands, and it's cheaper for the customer, the consumer in Ghana to buy the flowers from the Netherlands than to go directly to Kenya. So whilst we should cut the middleman, if we don't improve on the infrastructure, the reason why the cost of doing trading across borders between Ghana and Kenya is about over $400 compared to the Netherlands, which is about $120, is because of the fact that there are too many taxes, even at our ports of entry, and you take the airport, for instance. And therefore, flying from Ghana to Kenya, which is about 6,000 kilometers, is much more expensive than flying from Ghana to the United Kingdom of about 8,000 kilometers. And that is the reason why I will not fly my flowers from Kenya to Ghana, but I'll take from the Netherlands. So as much as we improve the payment system, I think that we need to reduce the other components of trade costs that deter trade. Because the payment system will only be useful when the trade is taking place. But if the trade is not taking place, no matter how effective the payment system is, if we don't trade among ourselves, there's nothing to do about the payment system. So it's important that that is done, even if the payment system is functioning. And to add to that, it will also help our economies to bring down the extent to which we put pressure on our domestic currencies. Because if there's a well-functioning payment system, and I'm going to do business in Zambia, I know certainly that I don't need the dollars to travel to Zambia with it, to convert back to, is it Kwacha or whatever it is. But I can leave and go to Zambia knowing very well that the money in my bank accounts here is as good as whatever I needed to do that business. So that itself should be a very important source of concern to our governments, that is one way in which we can tone down on the pressure on our domestic currencies within a continent. So it's something that should be encouraged.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Texan. So time now for questions and answers. If you have a question, you just indicate and then you go to the microphone closest to you. Okay, Professor Korte, you could get to the microphone. Yes, I see a hand there. You can also come right after Professor Korte. You tell us your name and ask the question. Yes, you could get close to the microphone there. Yes, Professor Korte.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all the panelists and the presenters. I have a very simple question. We said Africa produces similar commodities. What has changed? Are there opportunities for us to trade now? So my question basically is, what has changed? Have we improved on that to allow for intra-African trade?
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Peter Korte. Yes, please go ahead with your question. You tell us your name and then you ask your question.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Foley, Linus Foley. I take it from Professor Texan's end. Looking at the targets projections of the AFCFTA.
If you could kindly speak up so we can all hear you.
Sorry, I'm down a bit. If I take it from Professor Texan's end, looking at the the target projections as compared or contrasting with, how do I put it, with the realities on the ground, should we say that we are putting the cart before the horse, as he put it?
Should we say that we're doing what?
We are putting the cart before the horse, as Prof put it.
Okay, thank you very much. You can ask your question.
Thank you, Winston. My name is Francis Ofori. My question goes to Professor Texon. Right, so one of the crucial soft infrastructures that you mentioned was custom. So I just want to find out, and custom too currently is a serious trade barrier within the sub-region. Within the ACFTA space, is there a clear roadmap where customs will be unionized and common tariffs will be applied to cross-border transactions within the trade bloc? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, please go ahead.
Honestly, would you mind if I take the three of them?
Let me just pick the last one and I'll get to you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Kuja Desen, and my question is, without government putting things in place, like the infrastructures and everything, that means ACFTA will never work, because we can all see that before anything happens, unless government has included it in its budget, and if nothing is included in the government budget, ACFTA will never work. So we want to know, if ACFTA should work, that means government supposed to put it in its budget for us, the youth, to know that yes, the ACFTA dream, we can still rely on it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. And we have our online audience also. So if there's any question online, you could kindly ask. I think we have a question. Okay, so when we come back for the next round of questions, we'll go online and take the online questions. Yes, Professor Texon, let me start off from you.
Okay, so let me first respond to Professor Court. Yeah, Prof, the similarities in our comparative advantage means that naturally we shouldn't trade among ourselves. But we are looking at industrialization. So if you heard me, I mentioned that the focus of the ACFTA is to concentrate on what do you call it, pharmaceuticals and vaccines, agribusiness, automotive sector, and then transport and logistics. This calls for higher value addition. When we begin to industrialize to produce higher value addition, there will be, by all means, the reason for us to trade among ourselves. But if we continue with the primary products, then no matter what we do, we will not trade among ourselves. So it's the potential that the ACFTA has for us in Africa is for each country to begin to think about higher value addition, so that we reduce our reliance on imports from without the continent, so that we can rely on ourselves and then import from ourselves. So yes, currently the comparative advantage is the same. We need to move our comparative advantage to the next level of higher value addition and trade more among ourselves. And then the reason why I said that putting a cart before the horse is that I'm excited ACFTA has come. We are all excited about ACFTA. But if we do not remove the bottlenecks, especially with regards to infrastructure and trade facilitation, no matter what we do, if you estimate the bilateral trade between countries, the major obstacles to trade are all about trade facilitation. And so no matter what we do, if we do not improve on logistics, then we are excited about ACFTA, but we are not going to see anything happening. And that is why I ended by saying that if we do not improve on logistics, then our excitement about ACFTA now is like putting the cart before the horse. And there is no way the horse is going to be able to move with the goods. So it means that the trade will not come on. So that is what I meant. Gentlemen, I do not say that the ACFTA is not good. I'm not condemning the ACFTA. I'm being very realistic with our expectations about ACFTA. I've told my students over time that we should not get too much excited about ACFTA. In the first place, our comparative advantages are similar. So if we don't trade among ourselves, it's not something that is strange. But then there's a lot of work that we need to do. And if you look at Ghana, for instance, Ghana is doing well. Our projection about the CAAS Obatapa program, you see the sectors that we are aligning ourselves with are the sectors that the sub-region and the ACFTA are also encouraging. And so if all countries within a sub-region would begin to focus on value addition and focus on these sectors. The Obawa means something for us to trade in. We're already attracting some of the automobile giants into the country to assemble cars. It would mean that Ghana can now export cars to other West African or African countries. They might also have other automotive industries going to other countries, and therefore we can have trade. And if we have the payment system functioning, that means that I don't need to look for dollars to import a car. The cedis in my bank accounts will be transferred to another African country where I need that make of car to be able to buy the car. So these things are necessary before we get excited about the AFTA. Because after all, what the AFTA does currently is move away the tariffs, and that is all. It is not a custom union yet. And on the issue about the customs hindrances, yes, there is no harmonization of our processes. And that is also one of the reasons why the cost of document compliance at our border is very high. If you're able to, we don't need to have a custom union to facilitate trade. But if we harmonize or standardize our processes, then I know that whatever is required of me in Ghana from the custom authorities is the same that will be required of me when I get into another country. So meeting those compliance issues across country doesn't come at a higher cost to me, and that is what we need to work out now. And that is what the first phase of the AFTA is looking to do.
Great. I think all the questions were to you.
Yes,
you want to make a point?
Yeah, I just want to make one point. I think when our governor was speaking to us, he mentioned that we are beginning to see some manufacturing entities in the country move across border with some amount of success. Obviously, they are doing it in the midst of a lot of the challenges. I think one of the key things for us as we contemplate fully implementing AFTA is to actually find out where the challenges are and use them as the case studies. Because we are aware as banks, we are aware that some of our corporate clients are indeed venturing into these countries. Despite the challenges, they are still quite profitable ventures, which then means that if we actually further simplify or streamline things, then that means we can even enhance the values bigger. So that's the opportunity that is within the AFTA that gives us the call to action to try and fix.
Okay, so some persons have been asking questions online, and they've been printed and sent to me. So one for you, Mr. Otu, is that what will be the impact of the ECD and other e-currencies on the growth of payments in Africa? And should the effort not rather be on one Pan-African digital or cryptocurrency? That's a question for you.
That is the impact of the ECD on...
Yes. What will be the impact of the ECD and other e-currencies on the growth of payments in Africa?
Well, of course, if you think about it in the hard way, I mean, for us here in Ghana, what the ECD will likely do is that it will help facilitate payments. Of course, we will see a drift away from the use of paper currency. We'll be saving a little bit more by not printing hard currency. And therefore, if you look at it from that angle, I think from the Ghanaian perspective, it's a positive add-on to our economic management. For the rest of Africa, I cannot tell what the ECD will be doing to the rest of Africa, but I can only concentrate on what it will do to Ghana.
Now, the other angle of the question is, should the effort not rather be on one Pan-African digital or cryptocurrency?
Well, so the effort is, yes, we could have one Pan-African e-currency moving around, but I think you heard what the governor said. We now then need the concerted effort of all other countries to join in. Ghana cannot go it all alone. We need other countries to have policies to drive ECD. And even when they do that, we then need a big national ECD project to try to ensure that all the ECD from all the countries are integrated. I think this is where the challenge lies.
Final one for you says, what will be the role of the Development Bank and Exim Bank in infrastructure for AFTA?
Well, the Development Bank, I think we all know what their mandate is. They are providing wholesale funding to commercial banks to enable the commercial bank fund big-time projects for the country. So as far as infrastructure is concerned, you heard Prof. Texan, he clearly distinguished between the hard infrastructure and the soft infrastructure. The Development Bank could go both ways. They could go towards funding hard infrastructure and then the soft infrastructure as well.
Okay, let me get to you, Professor Texan, because there's a question to you that says, we know that financial institutions in Ghana do not have strong balance sheets to underwrite the big ticket, capital infrastructure projects. How can, for instance, Ghanaian banks get around this? I think you can use Nanes in the meantime.
Okay, it's okay.
It's working now. Okay, great.
I'm not sure if I'm in a position to answer this because this is more of the central bank. But I think that the banking system now is much stronger than it was. I mean, after the reforms that was done. I'm not capable of saying emphatically whether our banks are strong. But one way we can focus on this PPP thing with the backing of the banks is to use our regional banks. The African Development Bank is there to support. They've clearly indicated that will be there to support. So they are a bank that could be able to raise that financial muscle to support. I cannot, maybe Philip will speak to that.
No, maybe, so he just said it. He just said it right. The banks are strong. But the reason why, again, I'll go back to the DBGs. The DBG is aimed to fill that gap. So what we see the DBG coming in to do is to help finance such big ticket projects, and it will be doing that through the commercial banks. So that is where the linkage is. The banks are strong. The banks don't have the muscle to go into big ticket funding of projects. The development bank concept is there to fill that void.
Great. John, a question for you says, the FinTech and Innovation Office is one of the most brilliant innovations by the Bank of Ghana. How do we see FinTechs changing banking in Africa within AFTA?
Well, I think the most interesting thing is what Mr. Otu talked about with respect to the ACD, because I see it as a complement to what we're doing in the FinTech industry. I don't see it as a way of crowding us out, and I think it promotes a lot of financial inclusion. I think within that space, what we're seeing with cross-border payments is that I think it's too late to say that we should have a single currency across Africa. We see Nigeria with the e-Naira, Ghana is piloting the ECD. I think the most important thing for us is that when these pilots are happening, we have to ensure that they can work in a cross-border environment. And you have cases between Canada and Singapore. You have a project called the Jasper Ubin project. You have the Lionheart project between Hong Kong and Singapore as well. You have the ABA project between France and Switzerland. And then you have the Juba project between, I forget which countries it's between. But basically, when the ECDs and other digital currencies are being implemented or being created, we have to ensure that they are inbuilt to be able to work cross-border. And so in that sense, I don't think for now we should start talking about a unified digital currency. I think the horse has bolted. I think we have to see how within our respective African countries we can have digital currencies that work with our fintech companies like ourselves to reach the entire population.
Okay, finally, Prof, the question says, will PAPS not adversely crowd out private sector participation in the intra-Africa payment space? will PAPS not adversely crowd out private sector participation in the intra-Africa payment space?
What do you say private sector participation? I mean, I'm not too sure. The banks are private sector firms. They are going to be taking part in it. So I don't know if he meant private individuals but what you talk about private sector, the commercial banks are going to be part of this system. So I'm not too sure what the person means. Maybe Philip can respond to that.
All right, we're getting to the end of the panel discussion, but I'll give you, Mr. Otu, the final word before we wrap it up.
The final word?
Sure.
Okay, so I think we've listened to Prof. Prof has clearly talked about hard and soft infrastructure, but I think the central bank cannot sit here without also not talking about an aspect of the soft infrastructure which we have followed through diligently in the past years, and that is the macroeconomic environment. I mean, without a stable macroeconomic environment, I don't think all these investments in infrastructure, be it soft or be it hard, can ever take place. And I think on that score, the Bank of Ghana has done well until this recent crisis that we've had globally that has spilled over into the domestic economy. I think the key message that the Bank of Ghana will give on this platform is that we will continue to steadfastly guard that soft infrastructure of a stable macroeconomic environment to ensure that the businesses all flourish and continue to deliver jobs to the economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otu. Let me give Nana Bennett the final word also. As sponsors, UMB, you need to have a final word.
Thank you very much. I think for us, our final word is that following from the view on the macroeconomic status and the fact that we've enjoyed a lot of stability, and particularly from the financial reforms, we in the banking industry have benefited somewhat from that stability and the robustness that has been created in that industry. We locally have been able to syndicate to do some of those big transactions which hitherto we would not have been able to do. As we now contemplate doing more trade across the borders with our African neighbors, I think that we see that there's great opportunity, but there's some work that needs to be done to be able to realize the opportunity. However, the opportunity is big enough to motivate us to do the work that is required to do. And with a stable environment, the stage is set for us to do that work, which now starts to unlock the potential. But as always, we can start with baby steps, and then we develop, and then we go. I think if we try to bite too much before we are used to it, that's where we might falter a bit. But the future is bright as long as we are deliberate in terms of the work that needs to be done. And UMB, alongside all the other banks in the country, stand ready to work with the likes of the Development Bank, etc., to make sure that Ghana takes full advantage of this.
Thank you very, very much, Nana Juma Bene, who is CEO of UMB. And thank you also, John Appiah, who is CEO of eTransact, for joining the panel discussion. Of course, a big thank you, Mr. Otu of the Bank of Ghana. And also a big thank you to you, Professor Ebo Texan. I now would hand over to the Honorary Secretary to continue with the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. May I invite the chairman for this evening's session to give us his closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. The second session really brought out a lot of hidden issues. And I just wanted to say a few things about that. Our first segment laid out a broad framework and what is happening. But then at the second level, we got a lot of good questions and kind of warning signals about the kinds of things that we need to do to ensure that we do not build castles in the air. The one idea was that we shouldn't make this a talk shop and think too big that it overwhelms all of us. If you are old enough, you may have heard of the West African Highway. It was studied everywhere. And when I met a Nigerian colleague back in the States a long time ago, he also had studied West African Highway, but then it never happened. And it's been there since the 60s. Similarly with the Lagos Plan of Action, it had a lot of stuff in there. Yesterday, the speaker talked about it. So we need to kind of make a distinction between the big things and the road we take to achieve those big things. And so the big scale projects that you talked about, right, how it will be financed, how it will be constructed, who are going to be the construction companies, who are going to be the financiers. Those are all very important. And we need to think about how our SMEs can play a role in this venture. And even the Malata market women who come from Burkina Faso to buy stuff on the weekend, we need to understand what they are doing so that it can become like the organism through which we can grow bigger things. I also heard that there was this distinction about the hard and the soft infrastructure, which has been a good organizing framework. And I think a lot is happening on the soft infrastructure. A lot of opportunities to do a lot of that. And the governor's talk gave us what can happen or is happening in the payment systems arena, similarly with the e-transact opportunities. Then Professor Texan made a point that this idea of the free trade area is really about manufacturing and maybe the pharmaceuticals and the automobiles and so on. I think it was in reference to Professor Cortez' question about don't we all make the same things? How can we make the same things? So that is also interesting because if you manufacture, say vehicles or trucks, you have to move it to other countries, and you can only do that with good infrastructure. You have to carry the vehicles. They are heavy. You can't just put it on a plane or something, right? So you need railways, you need big highways, you need the ports, the shipping lines to move those products. Otherwise, the range of those products is going to be pretty narrow. You can only ship to maybe Togo or Cote d'Ivoire. Even Burkina will be very far to ship vehicles. You have to load them on some flatbeds to move them there. So these are fundamental questions that I think we should all focus on to bring this idea of the free trade area into reality. The idea that the duties will come down is very important for many of us who are involved in trading and manufacturing and so on. But it's a big task ahead, and I'm very glad that our speakers have opened our eyes to what this thing is about and how we need to think about it, and maybe to also let the decision makers understand that it is more than a paper document. That is not just a legal framework, but actually there must be a mechanism through which the logistics issues and the transformational issues can be addressed. Thank you all very much for the speakers and also the panelists for very insightful things, and also for the question, who give the questions. I think you helped to elaborate or to open our eyes to many more issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our chairman, Professor Kofinti, for those remarks. And with that, we have come to the end of this evening's session and our 3-day public forum for 2022. I'd like to thank everyone here and online for your audience and for your very active participation. I want to acknowledge our students, the schools represented here, Ganata Senior High School. I know some of them have left. Accra College of Education, Accra, Accra Technical Training College, and Presbyterian Secondary Senior, Presbyterian Senior High School, Thank you very much. You've made our evening a great delight, and it's been very educative, and I hope that the conversation will not end here, but that we will continue to engage with the issues on how we can make the Africa Continental Free Trade Area work. Thank you very much. When you leave, please remember to get something to eat and drink. There is refreshment waiting for you. I now hand over to the moderator, Mr. Amwa, who will guide us through the picture-taking session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. So for the picture taking, we'll start with the chairman for the occasion, Professor Nti. He will join the speakers here and we'll take the first photo. So Professor Nti, kindly join us on stage. The Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Addison, please join us also so we can have the first picture. seated. Please let's remain seated.
Objectives with your money at highly competitive growth rates. UMB.
All right, so thank you very, very much, all of you, for making time to join this public lecture, public forum. Now, the speakers and the panel would please leave us, including the chairman and the vice president of the sciences section of the academy, as well as the honorary secretary, while we remain seated. The speakers, the panelists would leave, and then we can also leave. So let's remain seated as the honorary secretary, the speakers, the panelists, and the vice president of the science section leave us.
You have worked hard, you strived and achieved, and now you're acclaimed for all that is good and great. Now you can and must have advantages because you deserve it. You deserve a private bank that is there for you and works for you. So that
Thank
you
you,
can have
all
the
of you.
time to enjoy
We can all depart now,
and
but
take care of what is
our gifts are by
important.
our chairs, so we
It
shouldn't
is
forget
time
them.
for the best
And make
you
sure we don't forget
with
any of our
UMB
belongings.
Prominence Bank.
Enjoy your evening.
Private banking that delivers and works for the best you, because you deserve it.
Quick, convertible, and growing. We know that's how you need your money. For the dynamic small or medium scale enterprise of today, cash flow is crucial to survival. Hence, with our thorough understanding of both local and international markets, we address your liquidity concerns in two main ways. Our deposit services comprising convertible and growing. We know that's how you need your money. For the dynamic small or medium scale enterprise of today, cash flow is crucial to survival. Hence, with our thorough understanding of both local and international markets, we address your liquidity concerns in two main ways. Our deposit services comprising the UMB current account, call account, sweep account, fixed deposit account, and treasury bill services. And our foreign currency services comprising purchase and sale of foreign currency, spots and forwards, and inbound money transfer. With UMB Business Banking Treasury Services, you can count on achieving your financial objectives with your money at highly competitive growth rates. UMB. Industry is the engine of a nation. Local corporates like companies in the agri-processing, commerce, manufacturing, oil and gas, telecom and construction sectors convert energy from the country's resources into useful products. Finance fuels all enterprise. Non-banking financial institutions composed of insurance, pension management, credit unions, microfinance, savings and loans and finance houses help enable businesses and individuals to sustain their activities. Not-for-profit organizations including NGOs, embassies, medical facilities, educational institutions, faith-based organizations, bilateral or multilateral agencies provide the structure to assist those in need of support. Multinational corporations and enterprises are the doors that open to connect us to the rest of the world. And government, which incorporates government business and parastatals such as the ministries, government agencies, departments and related businesses, serves as the wheel to steer the population. If any of the notable entities mentioned characterizes your organization, then UMB Corporate Banking is just for you. Join us and let's drive our world together. UMB. In the circle of life, beginnings are very important to us. So are foresight and preparation. That's why we give you an early start with the UMB, ABC, and piggy bank accounts. A spirit of innovation and our conviction to impart financial responsibility to those growing up drives us to offer the Smart Teen account and Young Adult account. We also support your sense of aspiration. For the conscientious student, our Aspire account is just perfect. Our core values of ease and convenience are exhibited in products such as the UMB Current Account,